I think the success of Nandan Clean Tech Limited is a first mover advantage, as you rightly said. Because probably we are one of those companies, who initiated the biofuels project almost about a decade back when nobody was actually thinking of biofuels. Uh, During that particular time, the government of India was looking to have alternative sources of energy. As you're aware, that India imports almost 80% of the oil is imported into the country, and the government was looking to have some kind of a substitute to sort of take up biofuels and to look at about blending about 20%. Uh, to look at 20% blending, that is what the initial target which the government of India was looking at it. Uh, Fortunately for us, what has happened was we have been into the plant sciences business. When the company started, we are into the crop sciences, we are into the plant sciences. And initially, the company, when we started the company, our focus was on natural plants. And we have another vertical where we do the entire value chain of natural plants. We do research on the natural plant. We take the active ingredient from those crops, we convert them into bulk extract, and we convert them into formulation. Basically, it goes for lifestyle disorders, it goes for healthcare industry. And the background of our company is that as we are doing research on the natural crops, Jatropha carcass was taken as a natural crop research, not as a biofuel crop research. So what has happened was, we had that advantage of the R&D on the plant sciences of it. During the same time, as I was talking to you, that the government of India was looking to have carbon emission reduction, blending targets, and they're looking at renewable sources of energy. And during the same time, the Planning Commission had come with a report, especially on the biofuels part of it. And Jatropha carcass was mentioned in that particular report. We said that we were already doing research, not from the perspective of the biofuel part of it, but we are looking from the natural side of it. Because Jatropha carcass as a plant has got other properties which are used into pharma industries, which are used for, in the natural industries. It's literally called as village pharmacy. So that was an advantage, we had moved into it, and we saw that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in this country. And then we thought that, we looking at biofuels then. That's how the story of the biofuels started with our company. Where no other companies were thinking of it. We first thought that it's going to be the future industry, is going to be the industry for the future. So as you rightly said, yes, this was the first more advantage the company started with.
What was your first breakthrough? And help us understand the markets that you're catering at the moment.
Uh, you know, Before I go to that, just let me go back to the history. From the perspective of the biofuel, as a market, as a country, how we are looking at it. You're aware that the 2009 policy had come out with the biofuel policy in India, where they looked at 20% blending by 2017 and about 5% blending in ethanol. And when you look at the kind of requirement of 20% blending of green diesel or biodiesel, you require almost about 16.5 million metric tons of green diesel or biodiesel. And to produce that amount of biodiesel, you require almost about 13 to 14 million, hectares. 13 million hectares are required. So when you look at the market size, it's about almost 16.5 million metric tons of biodiesel required for the country. So you look at 20% blending. And to cater to that, you require almost, as I told you, about 13 million hectares are required for that. But there are a lot of challenges, to reach that kind of a target, and the kind of time horizon we're looking at about 2017 is not too far. Realistically, I don't think it's going to happen, by 2017, the 20% blending. So from our perspective, I think if in case we can reach about 3 to 4% blending target, I think it's a huge amount of target which has been achieved. And I think if in case we reach that amount of target, also I think it's a very good start for the country. What we have done, particularly in this particular perspective, is that to reach that kind of a target, we have set ourselves as a plan for next 5 years. So what we're going to target about 2.5 million metric tons in next 5 years. And that would come, with a 1 million hectares of the land area. So I think when you look at the kind of market size of 16.5 million metric tons, 20% blending, and we're targeting about 2.5. I think we're comfortably about 3 to 4% market share, uh, and comfortably, I think that can be achieved.
Um, so let's talk about the challenges. Um, there has been a lot of oppositions and criticisms as far as um, the cultivation of crops like biofuel crops, jatropha, etc. are concerned. Um, we are to- there have been UN figures talking about almost 5,000 deaths of children below the age of 5 every day. We what I'm talking about is food crisis in India, which is in the world, which is endemic. So as more and more, because it's a competitive business, as more and more land is brought under cultivation, the problem of food, security, that it's going to become more challenging. So to begin with, such a business model is great, but how challenging do you think it's going to get in the years to come?
Well, it's very interesting. For any country, food is going to be the first priority for any country, be it Africa, India, or for any part of the world. Food is going to be the first priority for any country. When we started this business, we always said to ourselves that we're going to be a sustainable energy company. We are not going to be a biodiesel company. We are going to be a sustainable energy company. The reason is that when you look at the land profile of any country, there are certain zones which are being there are certain zones where you grow agricultural crop. There are certain areas where grazing happens for the animal to graze that and to generate that feedstock for the animal, and there are certain areas where there is an availability of land is there. So India predominantly is an a net importer of edible oil. So we cannot be looking at edible oil to convert into biodiesel. So we are very clear on that. And number one, number two, what we are looking at is that we will be only targeting that amount of land which is basically not being used for the agricultural areas. For example, obviously when you go to a farmer and ask him to grow a crop of paddy or jatropha, he's going to grow paddy first. So he's not going to grow jatropha. So we are not touching those land which are predominantly the agricultural land. Typically, I'm talking about land profile where the minimum rainfall is about 600 to 800 rainfall. Part of Rajasthan, part of Gujarat, part of Marathwada, part of Chhattisgarh, part of MP. So these are certain profile of land which has already been demarcated for this kind of crop. In fact, when you look at the policy also, they have mentioned about this that it has to be grown on the marginal lands. So we are very clear from the beginning that we have to grow on the marginal land, not touching the agriculture part of it. And in growing those particular crop, also we have when you there are about three challenges we found to ourselves. One is that this, as I told in my beginning of my talk, that it's a new crop, it's a new industry, and not much of research has gone into the bioenergy crop. So first challenge we took for ourselves is that because of the small land holding and to get a better productivity on the marginal land, we said that we need to do an organized research first. So the first focus on us was to do research on the bioenergy crop. Today, as a company, we are one of the, we are the only company to have acquired about 4 patents on Jatropha carpus on high yielding variety, high oil content, intra-specific, and high oilic content. Our understanding was that if in case you're looking at a target of either 16.5 million metric tons or 2.5 million metric tons, you require a huge land bank to cultivate that, and the land banks are fragmented. A small land bank, the holding of any farmer is very, very small. It could be maximum about 1.5 to 2 hectares. So the challenge is, how do I scale up my operations, and how do I get better productivity on the marginal land? The first challenge we said was that we will give a certain amount of scientific knowledge to the for productivity of the land. So we have collected about 1,600 accessions across the country, and we have 40 scientists working in our research center, which is one of the largest research center in Hyderabad. We have about 800 acres of research area there, and we are doing multiple research on bioenergy crop. As I told, we have about 4 patents on that. So the objective was to get a better yield on the marginal land. So our average yield is about double. For example, it is about, let's say, 500 grams. So our yield is about 1 kg per plant. So that is how we are increasing the productivity on the marginal land. Number one. Number two, how do I now scale my operations? Because you require huge amount of feedstock. It's not about the demand; it's about the feedstock. It's not an oil like a fossil fuel. You dig it, you get it out. So it has to grow on ground. There is a gestation period, where you have to grow the plant. It takes about minimum 2 years, 3 years, 4 years sometimes, depending on the crop, depending on the profile of land, depending on the rain conditions and things like that. So we said to ourselves that can we look at certain innovative models, and I think our focus was always innovation. Innovation in the R&D, innovation in terms of implementing the projects on ground.
In fact, talking about R&D, in fact, that was a separate question because R&D is going to be it in fact is a very critical element of the entire business model. Can you give us some figure as to what percentage of the total turnover goes to towards R&D activities in your company?
Well, I think probably the for our company, as we've been a plant sciences company, our focus always have been R&D, research and development, either in the natural plant business or in the biofuel business. So at least about 6 to 8% of the our revenues are actually we again drive back into the R&D, because I think to us innovation and R&D has been the key for our success, either from the plant sciences part of it or in the conversion technologies also, which I'll come to a little later. But today, in fact, we have increased our research based, on multiple bioenergy crop. Apart from Jatropha, we're looking at Pongania, Simaruba, Camelina, and a lot of other crops. So we are increasing the basket of products, and with that, we're also researching it. So I think research has been the key focus for our company, and we spend considerable amount of time, energy, money, manpower into the research part of it.
Let me now try to touch upon a very critical aspect of the business, its competitiveness. The reason you're a hit today is because one, it's innovative; two, it's clean; three, it's catering to the energy hungry world. The key aspect is there's a price difference between the price of biofuel and the conventional what comes from the crude oil. Because of this demand gap, economics says that in due course of time the price of biofuels should increase, and then convergence theory says that the price of biofuel and the price of, let's say, diesel should converge at a point after a few years. Then as the price gap diminishes, that will take some bit of competitiveness quotient down. Your comments on it?
Well, I think when you look at from the perspective of the pricing, today the fossil fuel, averaging between $80 per barrel to $120 per barrel, it's going to get it's going to be an increasing side, over a period of time. Well, if in case you compare the fossil fuel the price along with the biodiesel price, today at this point in time it is expensive because you don't have the feedstock. The challenge here is how much, if in case it's like a demand and supply. Right. There's a demand, the supply, there's no supply of the feedstock. If in case we can increase the the feedstock side of it, the competitiveness of the biodiesel can come down. And we have made our own calculations, especially from the pricing of the biodiesel is concerned. So comfortably between $70 to $75 of the fossil fuel price can be manufactured. Biodiesel can be manufactured. I'm talking from the Indian perspective. For that, what we are doing is from our company's perspective, we're looking at innovative technologies again from the processing side of it, because we understand that this is a large volume, low value business, logistics, and creating that kind of a land bank and creating unit for that. It's going to be high cost infrastructure. So what we are trying to do is we are looking more of a decentralized model. We are going to have a feedstock produced there, and apart from the seed, we are also looking at certain second generation technologies along with the biomass can be converted into the oil. So the objective of our company is to reduce the cost, be more competitive than the fossil diesel price, and also convert the entire biomass into green diesel. The reason when you are growing this, either the bioenergy crop, you generate a huge amount of biomass. We are going to use the biomass along with the seed, so that the entire biomass, the seed is being utilized, and it's going to be a decentralized model, so that you have the feedstock there, you convert the green diesel there itself, and you can supply it to the end consumers. So when you compare the cost, the biodiesel pricing can be much competitive than the fossil diesel price. So it requires feedstock, it requires innovative technologies. If in case we can sort of get into innovative technologies and feedstock, I think biodiesel price is going to be much competitive. Look at from the perspective of India. Today, there was a recent price hike of diesel for about 5 rupees, which has really created a huge hue and cry across the country. And not even that, it's also affect the inflation. Ultimately it's affect your transportation cost goes up, your food prices goes up. So there is always a kind of a interlinked nexus between the food prices and the diesel prices. So I think somewhere we need to strike the balance, and I think there is no other choice. As the cost of fossil diesel is going to go up, the crude oil price is going to go up. I think we need to look at alternative. I think in the long term, I think it's going to be, there's no other choice for the countries.
Mr. Jadhav, let's talk about the big names who've been really interested in associating with Nandan Clean Tech. We've heard of names like Boeing and Emirates trying to associate themselves with you. Tell us about your clientele in the aviation sector, and how promising does it look for you as a potential market?
Well, I think as a biofuel company, we are looking at multiple verticals because, as I told you in the beginning of my talk, that our objective is to first develop the feedstock. So once we have the feedstock, then what will happen is we are looking at second generation technologies, where we can convert into green diesel, and the other vertical which we're looking at in the aviation biofuel also. You're aware, as per the World Economic Forum report, by 2050, there is a target to reduce about 50% of CO2 emissions, because there are a huge amount of emissions happening in the air, and most of the airlines, including Japan Airlines and including Virgin Atlantic and New Zealand Airlines, and a lot of these airlines have already tested biofuels, especially Jadropa, Camelina, other green diesel, and it's been running successfully. So I think there is a huge demand in the aviation biofuel. As per the target mandate, they have to reduce 50%. So there is a surge of demand which is actually shot up. We also don't want to miss that opportunity. So as we have, we have the feedstock with us, we have the research, we have the processing unit. So what we are looking at is adding certain technologies, to our own facilities. So we are adding an aviation technology because there is a certain amount of conversion technologies are required, and we are looking at multiple feedstock, including waste oil, including fish oil, including the regular bioenergy, SEO oil, and things like that. So once we have that kind of a feedstock, then we are also targeting the Emirates and Boeing and things like that.
Has any aviation company yet contracted you?
Actually, we are collaborating with certain technologies. For example, we have collaborated with Honeywell. Honeywell and our company is actually looking for developing a technology. Honeywell has already got a technology for aviation biofuels, so we would also associate with them for our feedstock to go through Honeywell technology. Ultimately, once this the technology is already available, what we are now looking at is how do we want to tie up for sustainable energy with large companies like this. So we had an initial talk with Emirates, and there was some interest which has come from Emirates. So currently what we are looking at is to upgrade our facilities to aviation technologies. So we see a future in that, and we are very keen that we'll get into that particular segment also.
If I may ask, what percentage of overall turnover are you expecting from the aviation sector?
Well, for us, aviation sector probably would add to at least 30 to 40% of our turnover. That's what we're looking at it, because that's a global requirement. To do that, what we're also doing, apart from India, we are moving, to Africa and Southeast Asia, because ultimately you also have to see the logistics. You also have to see, where I can supply the feedstock, feasibility and things like that. So we're looking Africa as one of our major destinations there. In fact, we already initiated project in Rwanda and Botswana, so that the feedstock is developed there and conversion can happen there and the supplies can happen, particularly to the European other airlines companies.
At this stage of Nandan Clean Tech, obviously catering to sectors like aviation will make a lot of business sense. But looking at catering to the mass markets of India, how promising does it look for you? And what are the plans and strategies to penetrate the mass middle class market of India?
Well, the first priority would always be, to cater to the Indian requirement, because obviously there are certain, when we are developing the projects in India, we need to supply it in India. I cannot be doing it, for supplying outside the country, because there are certain mandates which the government of India would also look at. Today there is no mandate, but over a period of time, as feedstock develops and the markets get matured, so there will be the first fulfillment would have to be to the mass catering of the transport sector. So that would be always our first priority. What we're looking at is, not taking the SVO part of it, the state vegetable oil, the other source of raw material, including, as I told you, some of the waste oil or bunker oil or some of the other oils, which will be used for converting into the ATF technology, aviation turbine fuel for that. So that is one part of the segment which will be catering to. And what we also have done is we have a joint venture with Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. So probably this in turn would supply to the ATF, to the airliners. So we would supply it to the oil company. So in turn they will use it to the airline companies. So I think the first priority will always be to the transport sector in this country, and look at alternative ways and means to supply to the aviation biofuels also.
Let's give us some forward-looking remarks about the strategies and where do you intend to position yourself in a span of, let's say, 10 years from now?
10 years from now, probably we'll be the only, sustainable green company, because I think for us, it took us almost about a decade to get in from a lab scale to on-ground, projects now. I think now today we are confident that it's going to get into a large-scale model now, especially from the perspective of the R&D what we are doing. We're increasing our basket of bioenergy crops. More research is happening in that area. Ultimately, we're converting the research onto the land, so our landscape is also getting increased. And as I told you, we are looking at about almost 1 million hectares in Southeast Asia, Africa, and India. And our target ultimately is to convert into green diesel, sustainable energy, and also we are looking at various means of green technologies. So I think probably we would like to attain the leadership in the biodiesel industry.
Starting from plant science to biofuels, do we see Chandan Clean Tech diversifying its company profile and incorporating other renewable energy in its business model in years to come?
The answer is, at this point in time, our focus is only on the green biodiesel part of it, and we're looking at different verticals on the transportation sector of it, from biomass to green diesel, from aviation, fuels also. As we go along, as we have developed the landscape, we'll also look at hybrid models, probably a combination of biomass, solar, combination of the wind along with biofuel. Because as we have the land mass being increased, so we look at hybrid power, hybrid technologies also. Ultimately, our focus would always be in the biodiesel sector.